It's November 7th. Time's ticking. 2026 will be here before you know it. Hanukkah will be here before you know it. The Hebrew class a month from now. Shabbat tomorrow for many of us. Fellowship, encouragement, being with other people, searching the scriptures, asking the Father for strength to be able to put it into effect. That's what we've got. So many things. And tonight, I want to we had a prayer request for a young man back in Kansas City that he would find the right gal. That's so important. And what's also important is not just finding the right person, but becoming the right person. And that's most important. I'm going to take you back to the Torah portion, Vayera, and I want you to go to chapter 18 in the book of Genesis. And my goal tonight, now based on this one particular prayer request, is I want to give you a process of continued growth, a process of continued intimacy. So if you're taking notes, which I'm hoping you are, then write down, there's going to be 3 specific time frames that I want to draw your attention to. And with these 3 particular appearances with the Lord, I want to show you that Yahweh is spending more time with Abram, who becomes Abraham, more and more time with every appearance. Now, this is the way that it should be in our journey. I don't need to spend countless hours with people. But the better my relationship is, the more in tune I am with them. And the time that I spend together with them is much more intimate and close in association. This is true with Abraham. Now remember, and keep this in mind, if there's ever anything that I've taught you or reminded you of what you already know, please don't forget that in Galatians chapter 3, verse 29, if you're in Christ, then you're Abraham's seed. This morning in our morning staff study, we talked about, well, what does it really mean to be in Christ? Well, let me just make this comment. It's much more than just believing that Jesus died on the cross, was buried, and rose again. It's much more than that. It is an abiding relationship with him and the word abiding inside of you and your life producing fruit. That's why if you're in Christ, then you're Abraham's seed. And according to John chapter 8, verse 39, if you're Abraham's seed, then you should do as Abraham did. And if you do as Abraham did, then I have to start with the beginning of the journey of Abraham in Lech Lecha in Genesis chapter 12. And I need to progressively go through the story of growth and maturity and intimacy with Yahweh and ask myself a question. In fact, if I was taking notes, you know what I'd be doing? I'd be writing down a question. Does my life display continued growth spiritually? Is my life producing fruit? Is my life look like the seed of Abraham? Because a seed, when it dies to itself, that seed then rises up to produce fruit. And that fruit is significant because inside that fruit is another seed. And then when you plant that seed and it dies to self, it'll produce more fruit. So since seed from the beginning was designed to reproduce after its own kind, then if Abraham is my father, spiritually speaking, in the earthly realm, and he's the seed that I should be after, I should be representing and looking like my father Abraham. And one of the beautiful characteristics of Abraham was he spent time with God. That is primo. So, I'd just make a little note and I'd write a note and I'd say, how am I doing with my time with God? Am I really focused on my time with God? or am I not? It's a great question. It's a serious challenge. And it should be something that I should be asking myself. What's my time like with the Father? Is it growing? Is it more intimate? Is it expanding? Can you see the evidence of it in my life? Now, in chapter 18, I noticed for the very first time this morning, the very first time ever, I was looking at the text in Hebrew, and you know what I noticed? Something very, very strange. I noticed that normally you would have a noun, and then you'd have a verb, and then you'd have a direct object. But you wouldn't start a sentence with a verb. Vayira, that's a verb. He appeared. That's how chapter 18 starts. And he appeared. Okay. And then it's the Lord to him. The whole sentence is mixed up. It should say, in proper English or in proper Hebrew, it should say, and the Lord appeared to Abram. That's not what it says. And you say, okay, so what's the big deal? It's a big deal. The reason it's a big deal is because, you see, the focus is on the action of the Lord upon the direct object, which is Abraham. Now, that gives a complete different perspective. See, and the Lord appeared to Abraham. Okay, great. But it's appeared. That's the focal point, like the subject. And this is the third time that the Lord's appeared to Abraham. The first time that he appears to Abraham is back in chapter 12. So if you go back over there and you look at verse 7. Now, Abram has left the Ur of Chaldees. Abram has now gone through the land of Canaan. Abraham has now built an altar between Shechem and Ai, between the place of strength and then the place of destruction. So it says, and the Lord appeared unto Abraham, this verse 7, Vayira. And the Lord appeared to Abraham. And he said, unto your seed will I give this land. And there he built an altar to the Lord, who appeared unto him. Okay, great. Okay, so the very first encounter that we have is he appears. Abram did what he was supposed to. He left the Ur of the Chaldees. Now he starts traveling through the land of Canaan. He builds an altar. He's getting ready to head south down into Egypt. And as he builds this altar, he builds it to remember. He doesn't build it to put a sacrifice on. He doesn't want to kill an animal. He builds it to remember. You know, I'm kind of proverbially known as the memory maker. So I always use this little object right here, and I'll say, okay, let's take a group picture. And so I want to make memories. That's what the altar was for. The altar was an encounter that he had with God. And that's what Shabbat's all about. Shabbat is a time to remember everything that Yahweh did in your life through the week. So that I can go, oh my stars, he really has been guiding me through the week. So Abram has this encounter, and the Lord says to him, he goes, okay, unto your seed, I'm going to give this land. And you go, great. I love it. Now, that's beautiful because that's the first time that the scripture reveals to us that the Lord appeared, and he appeared for this long. Short. Well, if you jump over to chapter 17, in chapter 17, verse 1, it says, and when Abram was 99 years old, and the Lord appeared to Abraham, Vayira. This was after a 13-year of no commentary. From the last verse of chapter 16 to chapter 17, verse 1, is a total of 13 years. 13 years, where did they go? Well, this is something that I warn people about constantly. Why? Because I've looked back on my own life and I've said, oh my stars, where did time go? What have I accomplished? What have I done? How have I changed? Have I matured? Am I the same person I was 5 years ago? Maybe a little bit hair color being different, but am I basically the same guy? I eat, I drink, I go to bed, I wake up, I go to work, I eat, I drink, I go to bed, and that's it? Or is there something in my life that says, wow, those years of emptiness, God said, well, you want to stay there? And for me, the answer is no. So, something I might do if I was taking notes, which I'm not. Am I progressively growing? Is it obvious that I'm not the same man? Is it obvious that the Lord's appearing to me in my life? Or am I in one of those droughts where year after year after year after year after year is just the same thing? I mean, before you know it, time flies. I mean, I've now been here for a year, for 13 months here in Stanton. And I have to look back and I have to ask myself the question, have I changed? Have I grown? Have I matured? Has Yahweh appeared to me in the way that he would appear to me? Those are questions I ask myself literally every week, because I need to know, I need to evaluate. So the Lord appears to him, and now what he says, he doesn't just say, okay, I'm going to give you and your descendants this land. He says, now what I want you to do is I want you to walk before me and I want you to be perfect. And then he says, and I'm going to make with you a covenant between me and you and multiply you exceedingly. And Abraham falls on his face, and God talks with him, saying, as for me, behold, my covenants with you, and you shall be a father of many nations. Neither shall your name be called any more Abram, but your name shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations I've made you, and I'll make you exceedingly fruitful. I'll make nations of you, and kings shall come out of you. And he goes on. And the point that I want to make is, did you notice that the first time in Vayera, the amount of time that God spent to him was this much? Now you're looking in chapter 17, the next time that he appears, because Abraham has now been through these growth cycles, these frustration levels. Now God spends a little bit more time with him. Well, that's the way it should be in my life. Now, the Lord has never visibly, tangibly appeared to me. For some people, he has. That's their testimony. For me, he hasn't. For me, what he does is he appears to me through this book, and he reveals to me things through this book. And the more time that I spend with him, and the more that I go through the cycles of life, the more time he spends with me. So how much time is he spending with you? That's a question we should all be asking. I mean, if we're Abraham's seed, is the Lord appearing to us? How is he appearing to you? Is he appearing to you like in this week's Torah portion in Vayera, where he appears through 3 angels, 3 messengers, as well as the Lord's presence being there? I mean, is that how he appears to you? Through other people who are there to bless or to bring healing or to guide you? That's a good question. If I'm Abraham's seed, I should do as Abraham did. And if I'm Abraham's seed, then I should experience the same things Abraham did in the 21st century. And you go, well, that's so simple. Yes, but if you don't stop to recognize that's happening to you, then you'll just be like so many of us that just year after year, we just repeat the same thing. No change, no difference, no fruit, no evidence, and no seed. Not good. So in chapter 17, he says, okay, I got more. Then you go to chapter 18, verse 1, which is the third time that he appears, Vayera. And then what he does is he now appears to him, but he doesn't just appear to him. What he does is he appears, and then he's got 3 messengers who come while the Lord is there with him the entire time. So the intensity of his appearance increases, which makes me ask the question to myself, is my head on a swivel? Do I recognize how Yahweh's using people in my life and his presence is with me in all of these encounters? It's probably something that I ought to make a note of and ask myself a question. Am I recognizing his presence while he sends people into my path? And then am I going to be ready to welcome those people? Am I going to live out Matthew chapter 25, which, by the way, is all about the seed of Abraham, beginning in verse 31, where when Yeshua himself returns and he gathers the nations together and he separates the sheep from the goats, the sheep because they were ready to serve, ran to serve, encouraged to serve, longed to serve, were there within their own capacity to serve. When people were hungry or thirsty or naked or in prison, or they were, or sick, those people were meeting their needs within priorities. Years ago, and it was my number one downfall in my life. Years ago, I was so busy with ministry and reaching out to the world and TV and hundreds and thousands of people and millions of people literally every week watching my shows. My head's growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And guess who I left out of the picture? I left out my family. When you have your priorities, honey bunny first, children second, extended family third, and then overflow, then you know you're in the right path. But if I'm focused on everybody out here, then I forget everybody in here. It falls apart. And that's what ended up happening to Lot. See, Lot, oh yeah, he was in the gate of Sodom. Oh yeah, he was an important guy within the city. Oh yeah, he had lots of money, lots of possessions, lots of things. But he lost his testimony with his family. He shot himself in the foot because he didn't prioritize what he's supposed to prioritize. And there's so much to say about that. And who knows whether we'll get to it tonight. But the reality is, what I need to do is in my progressive growth with Yahweh, I need to make sure that I'm recognizing his presence when he appears to me. And if we were to read through all of chapter 18, we'd find that all throughout these encounters, the Lord just happens to be with him. It's not just a promise, and detailing out the promise more in detail. Now he's with him when he's in the tent. He's with him when he's ministering to these three angels, these three men. He's with him when he gets up and he walks with two of the angels on the way towards Sodom, but he doesn't go. He just points the boys in the right direction, says, go on. And we talked about this on Monday night. Now, I want to take you to something very, very strange. And that is, if we go over to chapter 20, this is really, really strange. Now, this is what we had a special prayer request for a young man in Kansas City. And I want to take what I just got done sharing, because I've got him in the back of my mind as I'm sharing these things with you. Now what I want to do is I want to share with you something that you and I, because we're hooked on phonics, we probably are not noticing what's really being said. And I'm saying we probably aren't noticing what's being said. So I want to show you what's being said. Now, if I was taking notes, what I would do is I would make a little note. And I would say, am I righteous? That's a good question. Am I righteous? And you say, wow, that sounds personal. It is. Since I pray for you every day, no exception to the rule, I can ask you, are you righteous? Now I want to show you something. I want to show you something that's really interesting. So I'm going to give you one of two things to think about. Is Abimelech righteous? Or is Abraham righteous? Now keep that in mind, because you're going to look at this and you're going to see the answer is yes. Now be careful though, because what the reality is that the reality is you can do something good. You can do something that's righteous, but that righteous action doesn't create a canopy to call yourself righteous. Let me show you what I mean. Picking up here in chapter 20. And Abraham journeyed from thence toward the south country and dwelt between Kadesh and Shur, and he sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said of Sarah, his wife, she's my sister. And Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. Great. She's your sister? No big deal. I'll take her, and now I'm going to make her my honey bunny. But God came to Abimelech. Now notice how Abimelech's name, it's Avi Melech. Melech is the word for a king. Avi is the word for Av, father. My father is the king, Abimelech. Now, Abimelech, the king, can do whatever he wants. And according to the rules of his kingdom, all he has to do is just do what the king says to do. That's why in the Torah, a king was supposed to make his own copy of the Torah. Actually, two. One of them goes to the priest and the other one goes to him. And he carries that one with him everywhere. The king has to follow a set of rules. Now watch what Abimelech does. Now, God comes to him at night and says in a dream, behold, dude, you're dead as a doornail. For the woman which you have taken, she's a man's wife. And you go, oh, wait a minute. But Abimelech had not come near her, and he said, Lord, will you slay also a righteous nation? Now, Abimelech didn't go in and do the hoochie coo PG-13 with her. God prevented that from happening. But God said, you got a woman in there who she belongs to another man. You're a dead man if you even consider going in. So then Abimelech says to himself, he goes, whoa. Are you gonna slay a righteous nation? Now, remember that, okay? Because he's talking to Yahweh, he's talking to the Lord. Because the Lord comes to him and says, dude, you're dead meat. And he says, you're going to slay a righteous nation? And he goes on and he says, didn't Abraham, said he not unto me, she's my sister? And even she herself said, he's my brother. In the integrity of my heart and innocency of my hands, I've done this. That's a righteous man. He did what was right. So God, what's the only response God can give? Well, you know what? You didn't go in and do the hoochie coo PG-13 with her, okay? You may have had those thoughts, but you didn't do it. Good, I kept you from it, and I told you you're a dead man. But you said, oh, wait a minute. He said, sister. She said, brother. I took her. No issues. And God said unto him in a dream, yes, I know that you did this in the integrity of your heart. For I also withheld you from sinning against me. Not sinning against Abraham. Sinning against me. Because you see, I've called Abraham and Sarah together as one, as we've seen this in our Isaiah studies. He said, so I suffered you not to touch her. I made it possible for you not to touch her. I kept you away from that. Oh, you wanted to, but I wouldn't let you. And you did it in the integrity of your heart. Good for you. The Lord acquiesces to his statement and says, you are correct, Abimelech. Now, therefore, restore the man his wife. Why? Because he's a prophet. And I talked to you about this in pretty good detail on Monday night. He's a prophet. The first person in the Bible to be called a prophet. And what's the key characteristic to a prophet? Oh, I know. The prophets of today, they're all about telling you your fortune cookies and, and reading your mail and all kinds of stuff. But the characteristic that he leads with describing a prophet is an individual who prays and intercedes. He's a prophet, and he's going to pray for you, and you're going to live. And if you don't restore her, then you're going to die, you and all that are yours. Oh, my stars. So what does Abimelech do? I mean, God's just given the what for and the who done it and what you got to do. Therefore, remember, anytime you see the word therefore or wherefore or for, you have to ask what it's there for, based on what I've just got done telling you. Therefore, Abimelech rose early in the morning, called all his servants, and told all these things in their ears, and the men were shaken in their boots. Now, that's a good leader. A good leader will say, hey, boys and girls, this is what God says. Make sure that you do it, and everybody submitted to him. Or they could die. So I've got my choice. Do you want to die or do you want to live? Good question. If I was taking notes, I'd kind of make my vote. Since a couple of days ago was election day, I'd vote. Do I want to live or do I want to die? I have to decide. I have to prioritize. Verse 9. Then Abimelech called Abraham, got on his cell phone, called him and said, hey, Abraham, I'm a little bit confused here. You told me sister, she said brother, the Lord said wife, I gave her back to you. You're praying for me. Great. But come on, help me understand. I mean, I did what was right. I did what was righteous. You appear to be the guy who wasn't righteous. You were the liar, liar, pants on fire. You didn't tell me the whole story, and you almost had me go. So Abimelech calls Abraham and says unto him, what have you done to us? Not what have you done to me? What have you done to us as a nation? And what have I offended you? That you've brought on me and on my kingdom a great sin. You've done deeds unto me that should not have been done. So now my question is, who's righteous? Abraham righteous? Or Abimelech righteous? Because at this point in the story, it doesn't look like Abraham's righteous. It looks and it appears by God's own testimony that Abimelech is righteous. Now Abimelech confronts Abraham and says, I don't understand. Why'd you bring this great sin upon us? Why did you bring the temptation upon us? Why did you put my nation in jeopardy? Look at Abraham's response. And Abraham said, because I thought, surely the fear of God is not in this place, and they will slay me for my wife's sake. What? Well, I evaluated, and I quickly recognized that this is not a righteous place. It's not righteous at all. And so I fabricated that story. Now, it's true, she is my sister. But I fabricated the story that she's not my wife, though we know each other very, very well. And she's actually, going to give me a son, because at this time next year, I'm going to end up having a child through Sarah. So then he says, I scanned the horizon and I said, God's not in this place. Now, here's the point that I'm making in regards to our young man, as well as not just our young man for tonight, but for us. Because if this is just, wow, I've never seen that before, or, ooh, yeah, new thoughts, that doesn't mean diddly do. I need to evaluate me, and I need to say, me, where do I fit in this story? Now, what I did in my own personal study is I said, this sure sounds like the United States. I scan the United States and I go, the fear of God is not in this place. Not at all. Oh, there's individuals who occasionally do things that are righteous. But when I scan the nation, I go, the fear of God is not in this place. And I can bona fide state that clearly. The fear of God is not in this place. In fact, there's not a country on the face of the planet where we could say the fear of God is in this place. Oh, there's individuals within that there are, which begs me to ask the question, am I like Abimelech? Am I willing to listen to God so much that when God says no, I take it as no? I take the warning that God gives as a no, and then I find out what's going on here. He says, and yet, indeed, she is my sister, because she is. She's the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother. And she became my wife. So she is my sister. And I shared with you last week about this concept of my wife and my sister, and how valuable that is, and how important it is for every husband under the sun to treat their wife like their wife, but to treat their wife with the respect as the sister, to know where the boundaries are, and to know what to do, how to do it, when to do it. She is my sister, and she is my wife. I just didn't tell you she was my wife because I don't see the fear of God here. And because I don't see the fear of God here, I was concerned that you guys would kill me so that you could take her. Because at this age, Sarah is a hotsy-totsy. She's good looking to the point to where, man, the king wants a woman who's at this age, at the age of 90? Wow. There must have been something extraordinary about this woman. And it came to pass, when God caused me to wander from my father's house, that I said unto her, this is your kindness, which you shall show unto me. At every place where we shall come, say of me, he's my brother. So what does Abimelech do? Now watch this carefully. This is important, because Abimelech hears something. It doesn't necessarily resonate with him. Like, okay. But what he does is he takes sheep, oxen, men servants, women servants, and he gives them to Abraham and restores him Sarah, his wife. Wow. And Abimelech said, behold, my land is before you. Dwell wherever you want. Amazing. Which begs to ask the question, righteous, was it Abimelech or was it Abraham? Begs for me to ask the question, righteous or not? Oh yeah, every once in a while I'll do something good. I'll justify myself in saying, towards God, that's what I did. But I have to ask myself the question. And I've asked myself in relationship to our young man that we prayed for tonight, are you looking for a righteous woman? Or are you looking for just some hottie? Do you have the fear of God? Is that where you're looking? In the midst of a people who have the fear of God, or are you just, doing whatever happens to come your way, going for some crazy girl? Good question. I have to ask myself the same question. What am I going for? Am I going for something that dwells in the place where the fear of God is? Or am I going for something that dwells in a place where the fear of God is not? I have to ask myself a question. Do I find myself dwelling and thinking and longing to be in the place where the fear of God is, or do I long to be in a place that's not? Am I willing to save my own skin because of the society that I live in? So it's about self-preservation here. While risking, notice what Abraham did. He said, listen, hon, he goes, everywhere that we go, we're going to go to different places, different cities, we're going to go to different malls and different places, different restaurants to go out to eat. And wherever we go, just please say you're my sister. Can you imagine that? I mean, think about that. Think about your relationship with Yahweh. Instead of calling you his spouse, his beloved, his heartthrob, he just says, oh, yeah, that's my sister. And I would ask you, how do you treat him? And I'd ask you, how do you treat your spouse? How do you treat the one you're engaged to? How do you treat the one who's going to be coming your way in a future day? These are life stories right here. I love this, how Abimelech recognized, okay, I made the right call. I listened to God. I talked to Abraham. Abraham gave me his side of the story. I recognize the sovereignty of God. So what does he do? He says, I got a lot of wealth. I'm going to pass it on to you, because whoever blesses Abraham will be blessed. Whoever curses Abraham will be cursed. And so Abimelech, and unto Sarah he said, behold, I've given your brother 1,000 pieces of silver. Behold, he is to thee a covering of the eyes, unto all that are with you, and with all others. Thus she was reproved. Oh, my stars. What is this? I mean, look at that. Abimelech gives to her brother, Abraham, 1,000 silvers. In today's market, that'd be a pretty good chunk of change. He's given him all this ox, all this sheep, all this cattle, all this land, whatever he wants. And he says, he is to you a covering of the eyes, unto all that are with you, and with all. Thus she was reproved. Wow. Don't be upset at your husband. He is your covering. You are his Ezra Kenegdo, but he's the covering. And he's covering you. What a weird story. It's not over yet. Verse 17 says, so Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his maidservants, and they bare children. For the Lord had fast closed up all the wombs of the house of Abimelech because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. And as I shared with you on Monday night, I shared with you this amazing concept. You know, this is probably worth writing down. What are my needs? I didn't say, what are your wants? What are your needs? You should be writing that down. And then you should say, who else has needs similar to mine? I need to pray for them. I need to minister to them. I need to care into their lives. I need to take my focus off of me and I need to put it in on them. And you know what ends up happening? When you give and pray out of your need, which is real, God answers your prayers. That's why he goes on to say, okay, chapter 21, the Lord visits Abraham and Sarah and says, hey, in the coming year, you're going to have a child. She conceived. She bare a son in her old age. She's going to have a son of laughter. This is where the rubber meets the road. Where the rubber meets the road is I have to be honest enough with myself, literally, honest enough with, and say, what are my needs? What are my needs? And then in the process of those needs, I need to seek to minister into the lives of people in regards to those needs, pray for them that their needs will be met. And then what will God do? The liberal soul should be made fat. The one that gives shall be made fat. And he who waters will be watered. Find somebody else, give into their life. Walk in righteousness. Walk in the fear of God. Act with wisdom. Be wise. Be smart. Be prudent. Be filled with integrity. And then what Yahweh will do is he'll protect you. And he'll protect that which is yours. That's pretty important. Who are my relationships with? And what are my relationships built on? Is it self-gratification through me to make sure that my needs are met? Or is it to say, okay, I'm on a journey, lek leka. I'm on a journey, lek leka. I'm discovering myself. Step by step, God's growing me. I fail, I get back up and I overcome. I slip and I overcome. And I keep going and going and going and going and going. And the journey never ends until we're face to face with him. And then even then it won't end. It'll just continue to go on for another 1,000 years. So tonight, what I wanted to do, which was a complete different path that I was planning on taking, is I want to just challenge you. I want to challenge you with the Lord appearing to you. And I want to ask, is he? And if he is, are you recognizing him? And if he is appearing to you, how is it affecting your life? Are you changing? Or the people who are around you, they look at you and they say, you know, hey, you haven't changed in 30 years. You're the same old guy you always been. That's the last thing on the earth I would hope you'd want to hear. I want people who haven't seen me in 6 months. So I've got some friends coming up from Kansas City for the Hebrew class. They're just, not because they don't already know Hebrew, but they're coming up to support. And so I'm so excited. Do you know what I want them to say when they're with me? Man, Alan, you've changed. You're better. You're wiser. You're smarter. You're more loving. You're more compassionate. You're more like Abraham than ever before. That's what you ought to be longing to hear. Abimelech righteousness, Abraham righteousness. Abimelech was righteous in his choice, but that didn't make a righteous nation. Oh, yes, people make righteous decisions periodically. Doesn't make them a righteous individual. Because even if they choose to not be obedient to that righteousness, it's coitance. It's coitance. Choose life. Let me stop the call and wish you a wonderful Shabbat and open it up for any comments, any questions, and hopefully I can give you some answers. And Yahweh willing, you had some things to really think about tonight. And I want to encourage you, before you go to bed, you should go back over your notes. You should go back over your notes. If you just say, I didn't take notes, I don't need to, you're fooling yourself, because then you have no accountability to growth. You know, I go to a service every week. I've got my pen out. I've got my notes ready. It doesn't matter who's speaking. I want to learn. And then the Spirit will speak to me through that. I hope and pray that the Father was able to speak to you and that he appeared to you in a certain way tonight. And Shabbat Shalom.